Billionaire saw his wife pouring dirty water on his paralyzed father. What he did next shocked the whole mansion. "What the hell are you doing to my father, Vanessa?" Ethan Langford's voice boomed across the marble courtyard, cutting through the serene Atlanta morning like a razor-sharp edge. The servants froze, birds scattered from the rooftop, and for a brief, frozen moment, no one dared move. Vanessa Langford, his beautiful wife, stood at the center, a silver bucket in her shaking hand. Ethan's fists clenched at his sides as he stormed toward Vanessa. His pulse hammered in his chest, each step on the marble floors making his anger grow. The air was thick with tension, the only sound the soft splashing of the filthy water as it trickled down Arthur's frail legs. "What the hell is going on here?" Ethan demanded, his voice sharp, barely controlled. Vanessa flinched. Her eyes darted toward the servants standing at the edges of the courtyard. They were too afraid to even breathe, their eyes cast downward. She clutched the bucket tightly in her trembling hands, her lips pressed together in a tight line. But Ethan could see the fear in her eyes, the fear of getting caught. I'm cleaning," Vanessa stammered, trying to keep her voice steady. It was an accident, he knocked it over." "Don't lie to me," Ethan snapped, his voice growing louder, cutting through the cold silence of the courtyard. "What the hell are you doing to my father, Vanessa? Tell me the truth." Arthur sat motionless in his wheelchair, his body thin and frail, a shadow of the man he used to be. His cloudy eyes blinked slowly. His lips parted in an attempt to speak, but the stroke had stolen his ability to form words. His body was a prison, trapped in a broken vessel. The only thing left was his spirit, and that was being shattered right before Ethan's eyes. Ethan's heart raced as he reached his father's side, kneeling down to wipe the water from his face. His father's pale skin was covered in the filth, the scent of bleach and something worse clinging to the air. A low whimper escaped Arthur's lips, and Ethan's anger exploded. "Vanessa, you had one job," he growled, his teeth clenched. "You were supposed to take care of him, treat him with respect. The same man who gave me everything. And now you're doing this to him?" Vanessa's face went pale, her eyes wide with panic. "Ethan, I didn't mean to," she started, but the words faltered in her throat. "Enough," Ethan thundered, standing up and turning toward the servants, his voice seething with fury. "Tell me this isn't happening. Someone tell me this isn't real." Rosa, the head maid, stepped forward, her hands trembling as she wiped away the tears that had welled up in her eyes. "Sir, maybe we should get Mr. Langford dry," she suggested quietly, her voice barely above a whisper. "Not yet," Ethan barked. "Not until someone tells me what's going on here." Vanessa looked around the courtyard, her face flushed with guilt, but she refused to meet Ethan's gaze. She could barely hold her ground, her shoulders slumped in defeat. "He's been difficult lately," she muttered, her voice barely audible. "I was just trying to clean him up." "Difficult?" Ethan's voice was icy, his words sharp as daggers. "This is my father you're talking about, not some inconvenience. What you've done here is unforgivable." Vanessa took a shaky breath, her hands trembling as she held the bucket, the last remnants of dirty water spilling out onto the ground. She looked down at her feet, avoiding Ethan's gaze. Her composure was cracking, the mask of the perfect wife slowly slipping away. I didn't mean any harm," Vanessa whispered, stepping back, her voice cracking under the weight of Ethan's anger. "I never meant for it to be like this." Ethan's eyes narrowed, his jaw tight with rage. "You didn't mean any harm?" he repeated, his voice dangerously calm. "You humiliated a man who can't even defend himself. And you think a simple apology is enough?" Vanessa opened her mouth to speak,
but no words came out. She looked around at the servants, who were all watching in silent horror, too afraid to intervene. The silence was suffocating, the weight of Ethan's anger pressing down on everyone. "Do you think this is some game, Vanessa?" Ethan continued, his voice rising. "This is my family, my father. You've done enough damage. Now you need to leave." Her eyes filled with tears as she backed away from Ethan, her mind racing with panic. She reached for the glass doors to the mansion, her fingers trembling as she grasped the handle. Ethan's eyes followed her every movement, his gaze cold and unforgiving. "Go inside," he ordered softly, his voice low but firm. "And don't come out again. I don't want to see you near my father again." Vanessa's lips parted in disbelief, but she said nothing. The words had no power over her now. She had already lost him, and she knew it. As she slowly turned away, the servants exchanged uneasy glances. They could feel it, the moment when everything changed. Ethan stood in the courtyard, his fists clenched so tightly that his knuckles turned white. His mind was spinning, the truth finally crashing down on him. He had trusted her, believed in her, and now he could see what had been happening right under his nose. His father had suffered in silence, all while Vanessa played the role of the perfect wife. But no more. He turned his attention back to Arthur, whose eyes were still filled with sorrow. Ethan's heart broke for the man who had raised him, the man who had given him everything, and now he was being treated like this. "Dad," Ethan whispered, gently wiping the water from his father's face. "I'm so sorry. I didn't see it, but I see it now, and I'm going to fix this." The silence that followed was heavy, the weight of the truth settling over Ethan like a suffocating cloud. But deep down, he knew that this was just the beginning. The mansion, the life he had built, everything was about to change. And Vanessa? She was about to find out that Ethan Langford was not a man to be crossed, not when it came to his father.
The servants stood motionless, their eyes downcast, as Rosa gently wheeled Arthur back inside. Ethan stayed in the courtyard for a moment longer, his eyes burning with anger, his mind made up. He would no longer be fooled. The truth was out, and it would never be the same again. 2 months passed, and Ethan had thrown himself into his work. His private jet touched down in New York for a crucial investor summit. The summit was supposed to be smooth, uneventful, and profitable, a routine trip for a billionaire. But that night, as Ethan prepared to sleep, his phone rang at 2 a.m. He blinked, disoriented, as he picked up the call. It was Clara, the new caretaker who had replaced one of the nurses. Her voice quivered through the line, sending a cold shiver down Ethan's spine. "Mr. Langford, I'm so sorry to disturb you. I can't continue working there. I'm quitting." Ethan sat upright in bed. "Quitting?" His voice was rough with sleep. "What do you mean, quitting?" There was a long, shaky pause before Clara spoke again. I can't handle Mrs. Langford. Please, don't ask more. It's safer for me to leave." Before Ethan could process her words, the line went dead. He immediately dialed the number of the mansion, his mind racing with possibilities, but no one answered. Minutes later, Rosa, the head maid, finally picked up. Her voice was soft but tense. "Sir, everything's fine. Mr. Arthur is resting." "Where's Vanessa?" Ethan asked, his concern rising. She went out for an event, I think," Rosa answered, her words trailing off uncertainly. Ethan frowned, a strange sense of unease creeping up on him. For the first time, he noticed how often the word "think" appeared when he asked about Vanessa. That night, while reviewing documents in his hotel suite, Ethan couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong.
His mind raced back to all the small signs, Vanessa's behavior, the odd reports from the staff, Arthur's sudden weight loss. His thoughts were interrupted by another message, this time from Clara, the caretaker who had quit. Attached was a short video clip. Ethan hesitated before clicking on it. The dimly lit footage showed Vanessa's voice, sharp and venomous. "Your crippled father doesn't belong here. He drools, he stinks, and I'm tired of pretending he matters." The sound of a chair scraping violently followed, then Arthur's soft groan. Ethan's blood ran cold as the video abruptly ended. He played it again and again, the words sinking deeper into his chest, each one more damaging than the last. At that moment, Ethan wanted to believe it was a hoax. Maybe it was edited or taken out of context, but deep down, he knew it wasn't. Vanessa had always had a temper, but cruelty of this magnitude was beyond belief. Doubt began to seep into his thoughts. He thought back to the cold rooms, the way Arthur had looked more fragile with each passing day. Ethan's mind whirled as he sat there, the weight of what he was hearing and seeing pressing down on him. He hadn't realized how blind he had been. The woman he had married, the one he had loved, had betrayed him in ways he never thought possible. In the early hours of the morning, he packed his bags, determined to return home early. He couldn't ignore it anymore. He had to confront Vanessa, to see the truth with his own eyes. The next day, Ethan's black car rolled through the gates of the Langford mansion without warning. No driver, no entourage, just him. He had told no one he was coming home early. The mansion was eerily quiet when he arrived. The fountain in the courtyard trickled softly, the distant sound of music playing from Vanessa's wireless speaker. As Ethan walked through the doors, a sinking feeling settled in his gut. He knew something was about to happen, something he couldn't ignore any longer. And then he heard it. Vanessa's voice, sharp as broken glass. "Look at you," she spat, her words filled with contempt. "You think just because you're his father, you deserve this house? You're nothing but a burden." Ethan's pulse slammed in his ears. His feet moved forward, quiet but deliberate, as he peered around the corner. There, by the patio, was Arthur, trembling in his wheelchair, his thin arms shielding himself as Vanessa tipped a bucket toward him. The water, dirty and gray, splashed down, drenching Arthur. Ethan froze for a moment, his mind blank. His heart pounded in his chest. He wanted to run to his father, but the words escaped him. It was only when he heard the low whimper from Arthur that Ethan's rage erupted. "What the hell are you doing to my father, Vanessa?" His voice roared across the courtyard, raw and thunderous. Vanessa spun around, the bucket clattering to the ground as she took a step back, her eyes wide with fear. "Ethan, you're back," she stammered. Rosa, who had been standing nearby, dropped the gardening shears she was holding, covering her mouth in horror. The tension in the air was suffocating. Ethan moved quickly, his fists clenched, veins rising in his neck. "Explain yourself," he demanded, his voice laced with fury. Vanessa hesitated, stepping backward as she tried to come up with a response. "He spilled it on himself," she said, her words shaky. "I was just cleaning him up." "Liar!" The word tore from Ethan's lips before he could stop it. He knelt beside his father, his hands shaking as he wiped the murky water from Arthur's chest. The old man's lips quivered, and his eyes were wide with shame. Ethan's heart broke. "Dad?" he whispered softly. "Did she? Has she been doing this to you?" Arthur blinked, his eyes filling with tears that rolled silently down his wrinkled cheeks. Ethan's throat tightened as he turned to Vanessa. "What have you been doing to him, Vanessa?" Her voice cracked. "Ethan, listen to me. It's not what it looks like. Not what it looks like." But Ethan had already seen enough. His mind was made up.
"I have video proof," he said coldly. "Clara sent me the recording, and I didn't believe it until now." Vanessa's face drained of color. "You what?" "I know the truth now, Vanessa." Ethan's eyes were cold as ice, his words cutting through the tension. "I've seen you yell at him. You said he doesn't belong here." Vanessa stood there, her composure cracking completely. "You think you know everything, don't you? You're always gone, Ethan. You left me here with him, like a nursemaid. Do you know what that does to a woman?" Ethan's anger flared. He could feel his whole body shaking with the force of his fury. "Enough!" he thundered, slamming his hand against the table. The sound echoed through the courtyard. Vanessa fell silent, her body trembling. The servants stood frozen, watching in disbelief as Ethan turned to Rosa. "Take my father inside, now," he ordered, his voice deadly calm. As Rosa wheeled Arthur away, Ethan looked at Vanessa with eyes so cold that she flinched. He didn't speak another word, but there was a finality in his gaze. "From this moment on, we're done pretending."
Night fell over the Langford mansion, but no one slept. The house, usually filled with quiet luxury, felt suffocating under silence. Ethan sat alone in his office, the only light coming from his laptop screen. His father was resting upstairs under Rosa's care, his breathing weak but steady. Vanessa had locked herself in the guest room, her muffled sobs faint behind the closed doors. Ethan's jaw tightened as he opened the home security footage folder. He needed to see everything, every hallway, every camera feed, every timestamp. His finger hovered over the first file, marked April 2nd. He clicked play. There she was, Vanessa, in her silk robe, standing over Arthur. "I told you not to move, old man," she snapped, shoving a plate off the table. The food splattered across the marble floor. Arthur flinched but stayed silent, tears slipping down his face. Each video after that was worse. On April 10th, Vanessa slapped a cup of tea out of Arthur's hand, screaming at him to stop pretending to be helpless. On April 18th, she leaned close to his ear, hissing, "He'll never believe you. You can't even speak properly." Ethan froze. His body went cold as each video played out the horrific truth. His father, humiliated day after day, all behind the facade of luxury and silence. Each video was another piece of evidence of Vanessa's cruelty, hidden behind her perfect smile and charitable persona. When the last video ended, Ethan just sat there, his hand shaking. Rosa knocked softly on the door, but didn't enter. She didn't need to. The sound of Ethan's ragged breathing told her everything. "I can't believe this happened right under my roof," Ethan whispered, his voice low but shaking. Rosa stepped in hesitantly, tears in her eyes. "Sir, I want to tell you, but every time we tried, she threatened to fire us. She said she'd have us blacklisted." Ethan looked up at her, the weight of the betrayal heavy in his chest. "My father?" he asked, his voice breaking. Rosa nodded sadly. "He told us not to say a word. He didn't want to ruin your marriage." Ethan's throat tightened. He turned toward the window where the moonlight glowed faintly over the rose garden, his father's favorite spot. Arthur had endured it to protect him. He closed the laptop with a finality that resonated deep in his soul. "No more," he whispered to himself. "This ends now." The next morning, Vanessa woke up to find breakfast waiting on the table. Ethan sat across from her, his smile polite but empty. The storm was gathering inside him, ready to break. By evening, the Langford mansion gleamed with elegance. The charity dinner was underway, the crystal chandeliers shimmering overhead. Vanessa played her part, her beauty flawless,
her smile radiant and rehearsed. She mingled with the guests, unaware that Ethan had already set the wheels of justice in motion. "Tonight, we celebrate compassion," Vanessa announced, raising a glass. "The kind that begins at home." Ethan's hand tightened around his wine glass as his eyes flicked to Arthur, sitting quietly at a corner table. Rosa stood beside him, her gaze shifting nervously between Ethan and Vanessa. As the applause died down, Ethan stood, his voice carrying over the crowd. "My wife is right. Tonight is about compassion. But before we continue, I'd like to show everyone something that truly represents it." Vanessa's smile faltered. "Ethan, what are you doing?" Ethan lifted a small remote and pressed a button. The massive projector screen flickered to life, the music stopped, and the footage began to play. Vanessa's voice, cruel and venomous, filled the room. The guests fell silent, their faces filled with shock and disbelief. Ethan stepped forward, his tone cutting through the tension. "You humiliated me, but you humiliated my father even more."
Gasps filled the room as Vanessa stumbled backward, her face drained of color. She shrieked, her voice high-pitched with panic. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" Ethan remained calm, steady. "No, Vanessa. You humiliated yourself. You did this to a man who gave you everything, my father." His heart was lighter now. He had lost a wife, but found truth, redemption, and a father he'd almost forgotten how to love. He turned toward the mansion, lights glowing softly through the windows. Rosa and the staff were preparing dinner, laughter spilling faintly into the garden. For once there was no tension, no fear, just peace. Ethan looked up at the sky, whispering as if to his late mother, "I did what you'd have wanted. I protected him, and I learned that money can build a house, but not a home." He exhaled deeply, letting the night wind wash over him. Then, looking straight ahead, his voice grew calm but powerful. And in that moment, Ethan knew justice had been served, but grace had won. If this story touched your heart, if it reminded you that love without kindness is nothing but cruelty, then please take a second to like this video and share it with someone who believes in humanity. Because sometimes a single act of truth can heal generations.